Hey guys, it's Arron. Still hasn't released his Spider-Man Homecoming review. Turner here. And we're in for some shit today because I'm going to be ranking every SSU project, the Sony Spider-Man universe. Now, here's the thing. After Spider-Man Brand New Day comes out, I'm going to be doing an updated ranking of all the Spider-Man movies. And originally, I was going to include the SSU movies in that ranking. But as time went on, I decided that I don't really think it's fair to include the SSU movies with the other Spider-Man movies just because they're so different, and it's just not a fair comparison. So I decided, okay, Spider-Noir just came out, and it's an SSU project, even though it doesn't take place in the SSU. For those of you who are going to call me an idiot and wonder why I'm including Spider-Noir in this ranking, I'm right there with you. I don't understand it either, but it's officially listed as a part of the SSU. So I'm going to include it, and it gives me an excuse to also talk about some of the other SSU movies that I haven't talked about before. I also think it's a fitting time to do this ranking, considering that Spider-Noir is kind of a new era for the SSU. It's sort of a soft reboot. I guess it can also be considered phase 2 of the SSU, so that's why I'm doing this ranking. So I'm sure you guys can all guess what's gonna be in the number 1 spot, but let's get into this shit show. Spoiler alert, none of the movies are good. There's not a single good movie. So essentially how this ranking is going to work is I'm going to be starting with the absolute trash movie, the worst of the worst, and then slowly transition into what movie I consider to be the least bad, because even the best movie is bad. So at number 7, the worst SSU project. It was close, folks, because there's just so much shit in this universe to choose from. But I decided to go with the movie that I consider to be the most insulting, and that is Madam Web. This movie is poo-poo, and I don't like it. This is probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's probably the worst Marvel movie ever made. I have not seen every Marvel movie. There's shit like Howard the Duck I haven't seen, the Punisher movies I haven't seen, Ghost Rider, but I'm pretty confident in saying that this is probably worse. This is the most perplexing movie I've ever seen. It absolutely baffles me that Sony thought this would be a success, that people would care for this movie, that the story was appealing, that it baffles me that this movie even exists. This is a disaster. So Madam Web follows Cassandra Webb, who is a paramedic in New York City, who also works with Ben Parker, who is Peter's uncle. This movie takes place in 2003, before Peter Parker is born. And Mary Parker, Peter's mother, is pregnant with him. Basically, Cassandra Webb gets powers in the most idiotic way possible. Basically, her mother was in the Amazon researching spiders right before she died, which is a line that was in the trailer but cut from the actual movie because they realized how dumb it sounds, and everyone was making fun of that line. That's also a common theme with these movies. Sony will often put things in the trailer that aren't in the movie because I guess they're trying to trick people into thinking that the movie is cooler than it actually is. It's mostly with Morbius, which I'll get to, but Madam Web's case, yeah, they cut a line from the trailer because it was just laughable. Cassandra's mother was researching this spider, a specific species of spider that she was looking for, and Ezekiel, who ends up being the main villain of this movie, kills her mom because I guess he just really wants the spider for himself. The dumbest motivation possible. I'm gonna say it right now. I think Ezekiel in this movie is one of the worst villains I've ever seen in a movie. Probably the worst Marvel villain ever. His motivation in this movie is that he has a dream about these 3 spider women murdering his ass, throwing him out a window, and he wakes up and I guess his wife or whatever is like, what's going on? And then he's like, I have this vision of these 3 women killing me. And then it's like, well, it's probably a dream. And then he's like, no, it's not a dream. It's a vision of the future. First of all, I don't know how he knows this is a vision. He doesn't really, he has no proof that this is an actual thing that's going to happen. He just bases it off of a fucking dream that he has. And so he's like, okay, I'm gonna find these 3 teenage girls, because they're teenage girls at this point in 2003. Where the dream, vision, whatever, that where he gets murdered happens in the future when they have powers. So he's like, I'm gonna kill these 3 girls who are teenagers, who are kids in this movie. So he uses like some facial recognition database, whatever, to track down these 3 girls, and he's gonna kill them. And it's what the fuck? It's so nonsensical. This is the worst villain ever. This makes Emo Harry in Amazing Spider-Man 2 look like a genius. The way Cassandra Webb gets her psychic abilities doesn't make any sense. Her mother gives birth to her in the Amazon with this ancient spider tribe that's helping her, and a spider bites her while she's giving birth, and I guess that explains why Cassandra Webb has powers when she grows up. But the thing that doesn't make any sense is that Cassandra Webb is around 30 years old in this movie, because the flashback at the beginning where her mom is pregnant with her and dies takes place in 1973. So 30 years later, 2003. So she's about 30. And she still doesn't have her powers at that point. Like, they never really explain why her powers develop now rather than, when she was a kid or something. I don't know. The way she gets her powers is like her and Ben Parker are saving someone from an accident, and then the car tips with Cassandra inside. She falls into the river, and then that's how she gets her powers. Like, she has this like fucking psychedelic vision or whatever, and then she's saved, and apparently she was dead for like 3 minutes, but she comes back, and now she's psychic and she can see the future. They don't explain it. It just has something to do with the spider that bit her mom, and now 30 years later, all of a sudden now she gets her powers. Not to mention, Cassandra Webb is a very unlikable character. She seems to not really like anyone. She does not like teenagers, hates her mom for dying on her, I guess. She just doesn't like anybody. She's not charismatic. She's not funny. We're supposed to root for this character? Like, why? They also have these weird moments from Cassandra where she's trying to be like funny, or like the movie thinks she's being funny, but she really just comes across as an asshole. Like, there's a scene where Mary Parker is having like a baby shower or whatever to get together, and they're all trying to like guess the name of the baby, who we know is Peter Parker, but for some reason this movie refuses to say Peter. It's like they're scared of saying Peter Parker. But they're playing a game where they're guessing the baby, and then like Cassandra's like, oh yeah, my mom died giving birth to me. And it's like, it's almost like they're trying to be comedic with that scene, but it's like, why the fuck would you say that to someone who's gonna give birth soon? It's so weird. She's an asshole. One of the most uncharismatic and unlikable characters I've ever seen. And another thing that I don't think that helps this character is Dakota Johnson, the actress playing her. She sucks in this movie. It's like her performance, she doesn't seem like she's caring at all. The actresses who play the three teenage Spider-Women are doing a better job than Dakota Johnson. But that's another thing that's perplexing about this movie. The three Spider-Women, we got Julia Carpenter, who for some reason her last name is changed to Cornwall in this movie, even though it's Carpenter in the comics. I have no idea why. But we got Julia Carpenter, Anya Corazon, and Maddie Franklin. All three of these characters are Spider-Girl in the comics, or Spider-Woman, Spider-Girl, whatever. But this movie makes the decision to have it set during a time when they don't have powers. So what the plot of this movie is that Ezekiel, again, has a dream that these three teenage girls are going to kill him. So he's like, I'm going to go kill them. And Cassandra sees this, because she can, in her vision, and it's like, okay, these teenagers are going to die. I have to save them. So she's trying to save these teenagers from Ezekiel, who has spider powers. Why is this the plot of the movie? You establish that these three teenagers are going to become Spider-Women in the future. Yet we don't want to focus on Spider-Women and have an actual superhero in this movie. We're just going to have things low budget, and that's another thing. This movie feels incredibly low budget. The action is not even good. There's very little action in this movie. It doesn't really have action until the end, really. I remember hearing about some of the ideas they had for this movie in development, and at one point I did hear that they wanted the movie to be about these three Spider-Women going back in time to prevent Peter Parker's death, like when he's a kid. So they're trying to prevent his death so that he becomes Spider-Man later on. And that idea sounds so much better than the final movie. I have no idea why they didn't want to do anything with like Spider-Women in this movie, and instead just make it about, oh yeah, they'll become Spider-Women later, folks, maybe in a sequel. That's never gonna fucking happen because this movie blows. And I know everyone has pointed this out, but Ezekiel the villain has some really bad ADR. I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but a bunch of his dialogue is dubbed over, and it does not match at all. Nothing about this movie works. There's not a single redeeming quality. It's like, this isn't one of those movies where it's like, oh yeah, it's not really that great, but this particular aspect stands out, and I can't say that. Nothing about this movie works. The acting is bad, the characters are bad, main character is unlikable, it's not funny, worst villain ever, bad ADR, really fucking weird zoom in at the beginning. During the opening scene, they do this like weird zoom in and zoom out, and it's just a fucking scene of two people talking. Why are you zooming in and out constantly? It's fucking distracting. Also, one of the most insulting, offensive moments of the movie is the ending, where Cassandra Webb gets blinded, because she's blind in the comics, so we have to have her get blinded in this movie. So she's sitting in this wheelchair, and the three teenage girls, Julia, Maddie, Anya, They're bringing food in, and then they're like, oh yeah, what can you tell me about my future? And then it cuts to this montage of the three of them in costume as Spider-Women in the future, and fucking Cassandra Webb has a costume too. It's the most cheap looking costumes I've ever seen. And this goes back to what I was saying. This movie feels like it has like next to no budget. There's like one or two explosions at the end during the final fight with Ezekiel. But that's it. But you get this montage with them flipping around and shit as Spider-Women. Costumes look terrible. Also, Julia does not have eyes on her costume, so you can like see her eyes. Like she doesn't have fucking lenses like the other two have. What the fuck? It takes like two. You could have just fucking CG'd some eyes on her. It probably wouldn't have looked great, but I mean, like at least it would make more sense. What the fuck is why does she have a mask on where you can see her mouth and her eyes? Like it's not even a fucking mask. It's so. And of course, not to mention the detail that pissed me off, especially the first time I saw this movie. I actually rewatched this movie for this video. I rewatched this, Morbius, and Kraven the Hunter. Well, Kraven the Hunter I watched for the first time. I'll get to that. But I had a worse time watching it this time compared to the first time. And one of the most egregious moments is at the start of the montage at the end. I'm not kidding. They reuse a shot from Spider-Man 2. The fact that they thought this would be okay, that people wouldn't have a problem with this, is baffling. It's not even like, it's not like this is a multiverse movie. This isn't a multiverse movie. So I don't know why the fuck they thought that adding this shot would be a good idea. But it's the shot from Spider-Man 2 where Peter is running down the alley and he's changing into Spider-Man. And then the score goes up to an 11. I fucking love it. And he jumps up, and then you get the shot of the camera soaring up past the building. And they reuse that shot at the beginning of this montage in Madame Web. Fuck you, Sony. That's bullshit. You seriously couldn't have used any other shot to display Spider-Women doing their thing. And that's not the only thing they reuse. Even the music. People have pointed this out. I remember hearing this before I even saw the movie when it first came out. People have discovered that the music in Madame Web bears a striking resemblance to the music used in the PS4 Spider-Man game. Holy shit. How lazy can you be? Clearly no one cared when making this movie. No one gave a shit. Dakota Johnson did not give a shit. Sony did not give a shit. The writers did not give a shit. Nobody cared. They're just like, we're gonna slap together this dumb fucking movie. The only person who it seems like kinda gives somewhat of a shit is Sydney Sweeney, who plays Julia Cornwall, or Carpenter, whatever the fuck. I actually saw an interview with her about this movie, where she said that she really wanted to include Julia's upside down pose from the comics. And, it's not the most amazing thing ever. It's not like, holy shit, she's hanging upside down. this movie is amazing. No, but at least Sydney Sweeney was like, okay, she was passionate about that one thing. She's like, okay, I get to play Spider-Girl or Spider-Women. I don't know what Julia Carpenter's alias is in the comics. It's Spider-Girl or Spider-Women. I don't know. But, she gets to play a Spider-Woman. And she's like, okay, they're not letting me be an actual fucking Spider-Woman in this movie. So during the montage, or I think it's actually during the Ezekiel's dumbass dream he has in the beginning, but there's a shot where Julia comes down from the ceiling and she's upside down in her costume, in her horrible looking costume that looks like it has like a $2 budget with no fucking spider eyes. Okay, but besides that, at least Sydney Sweeney was actually like the only one actually caring about doing cool shit. No one took this movie seriously. This movie was so fucking bad that not even the actresses took it seriously. Dakota Johnson was making fun of it around the time the movie came out. Sydney Sweeney was also making fun of it. Fucking, what's her name? Isabelle Marced, who plays Anya Corazon. I think it was her, or it might have been the other who plays Maddie Franklin. One of the two. They're like posting memes about it on Instagram or whatever the fuck. When the movie was coming out, this wasn't like months later when the marketing was over. They were posting this shit during the movie's release. No one cared. That just goes to show you, no one cared about this movie. This is fucking... This is bullshit. Sony... This is the lowest Sony could possibly go. It's also just really insulting when you think about, just put yourself in the actress's shoes. Like Sydney Sweeney, Isabelle Marced. Imagine you get cast in a Marvel movie that Sony tricks you into thinking is the MCU because, it's been talked about. Sony is tricking people into thinking that their movies take place in the MCU. That's how they get these actors and actresses. They just tell them, yeah, you're going to be a part of the MCU. And then, they're like, holy shit, the MCU? I gotta sign up for this movie. And then it turns out it's a fucking disaster movie that is not the MCU. But just imagine how that from the actress's point of view. The three actresses who played Spider-Woman, they get cast to play Spider-Woman, and it's like you don't even have them become Spider-Women. They don't have powers in this movie. What the fuck? So yeah, in the end, Madam Web is a fucking disaster. It's one of the most insulting movies I've ever seen. Nothing works. Nobody cared. This was a waste of time and money. Okay, so at number 6 is Kraven the Hunter. Now, I just watched this for the first time in preparation for this video. I've been putting off watching it for like the past year. I did not see it when it came out. It wasn't playing at my cinema. That just goes to show you the state of the universe at that point. Wasn't even playing at my cinema. So I couldn't even see it if I wanted to, which I did not want to. But yes, I watched it for the first time like 2 days ago from the time I'm filming this. And surprise, it's a fucking disaster. This movie is poo-poo and I don't like it. So, Kraven the Hunter is a Spider-Man villain. And in the comics, he hunts animals. He hunts like lions and like the deadliest predators. This movie does not do that. The Kraven that we follow, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who, by the way, is terrible in this movie. He's not doing a good job. What they do with the Kraven we follow in this movie is that he's pretty much the opposite of the comic version. What happens is his dad in this movie, played by Russell Crowe, he's more in line with the Kraven from the comics. So I guess because Kraven's father is the bad Kraven, they felt like they had to make the main character more of a hero, an anti-hero, because I guess they couldn't figure out how to make a fucking movie where the main character is a villain work, even though they're making movies about villains. So the Kraven that's played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, Sergei Kravinoff, he is a protector of animals. He's basically an activist for not killing animals. So instead, he hunts the hunters. He's killing the people who are killing animals. He also has powers in this movie, which even by, comic book movie standards is pretty ridiculous. He gets bit by a lion and he dies. But this girl, who later becomes like an attorney who helps him out, saves his life by giving him a potion that her grandmother had, his magical potion. And it basically gives him super strength, gives him the ability to leap super high, basically act like a lion. And his eyes glow, and he can communicate with animals. So the animals don't attack him, and then he can also, sick the animals on someone else. It's ridiculous. And again, just like Madam Web, the acting is atrocious. This is probably has the worst acting out of any SSU movie. Especially the actress who plays Kraven's attorney friend. She's horrible in this. And even Aaron Taylor Johnson, like I said, I don't think he's doing a very good job. He doesn't really have range in this movie. He does one or two things. He acts badass and confused sometimes over what people are doing and what his brother Dimitri is doing. And that's another thing. Dimitri is in this movie, who is Chameleon in the comics, and they're and him and Kraven are half brothers. And his dad favors Sergei over Dimitri, and so Dimitri doesn't like his dad. And then Sergei, they spend 30 very significant amount of the movie's runtime dedicated to the Kravinoffs as kids dealing with their dad. And then Sergei runs away after he gets his powers. The main villain of this movie is Rhino. But he's not in a mech suit like Amazing Spider-Man 2. He has very hard skin, so he can basically physically transform into a rhino. And he sucks in this movie. His motivation is weak. During the flashback scenes where Kraven is a kid, you see Rhino, and I guess he becomes a villain because Kraven's dad was a little mean to him, and so he doesn't like Kraven's dad. So he just becomes a criminal. And you do see him fully transform into a rhino at the end of the movie, and it looks fucking horrible. That's another thing about this movie. The special effects are really, really bad. Very distracting CG. They use CG a lot on Kraven when he's jumping around and falling from buildings and shit. And I also noticed a really obvious stunt double during one scene. And yeah, Rhino's design, it's mostly his eyes that are just so distracting. And CG is horrible. Special effects are horrible. Acting is horrible. There's also another villain in this movie, the Foreigner, who's from the comics. But I can't even tell what the fuck his powers are. He shows up halfway through the movie with no explanation. They don't give him any sort of backstory, any sort of explanation for his powers. And all he does is he shows up and he counts to 3, says 1, 2, 3, and then he appears in another place. He phases to the other place. I can't even tell if he has super speed or if he able to teleport, or if he's able to freeze time for 3 seconds, or if he has phasing powers. I don't know what the fuck his powers are. He just shows up, he does his little fucking 1, 2, 3 thing, and then he kills people. No explanation for why he's in the movie. What the fuck? Again, this is another movie where you can tell that Sony just did not care. Nobody cared about about explaining shit. There was also 3 scenes that happened one after another, and this was the point in the movie where I was like, holy shit, like what were they thinking with this movie? Honestly, this probably could have been fixed if someone behind the scenes was like, hey, why don't we just fix that? Because it's an easy fix. So basically, there's a scene where the foreigner shows up to talk to the Rhino, and he does his little 1, 2, 3 thing, and then he shows up, and Rhino kind of looks at him like, what the fuck? Who are you? And then he's like, relax. And right after he says that, it immediately cuts to the next scene of Kraven talking to his attorney friend, whatever the fuck her name is. And it's like, what the fuck? The scene wasn't even over yet. You didn't finish the scene. He's literally about to say something and they cut away. And then the next scene is also terrible because you have like horrible performances, some of the worst line delivery I've ever seen. Kraven and his partner are talking in front of a plane, and it's just the line delivery, like, it's so off. It easily could have been fixed if they just did another fucking take. But again, this actress I'm referring to, she's bad throughout the entire film. Just horrible. Probably the worst performance of the movie. And that's saying a lot, because, like, nobody's giving a good performance in this movie. And then you have the scene after that. Again, it continues. This movie fucking never ends with how shit it is. The next scene after that, Kraven and his partner are like walking through the jungle or whatever, and then all of a sudden a tiger attacks Kraven, and because Kraven, communicates with animals, he's able to be like calm the tiger down, and then it cuts to his partner who has no reaction. That's also the fault of the director, I think, because you have to tell her what the fuck, how to react to this situation. You'd think, like, it's just common sense. Like, a tiger fucking jumps out of nowhere. You'd think she'd be freaked out, but she's not. She just says, "Oh, wow, you're so crazy." I'm not kidding. That's like the tone she says it in. It's terrible. And you might be wondering, does this movie have any connections to Spider-Man? Yes and no. There's a scene near the end where the foreigner injects Kraven with some sort of hallucinogen, and he hallucinates a bunch of spiders, because I guess it makes you hallucinate your biggest fear. So I guess that was their only connection to Spider-Man, is like Kraven is apparently afraid of spiders. Even though it doesn't really make much sense, considering like you'd think the guy who is like hates people and is all about animals would like not be afraid of spiders, but like whatever. And it also cuts to this fucking flashback of Kraven's mom, who's in an asylum in this movie because she went crazy a long time ago. And I recognize that from the comics, from Kraven's Last Hunt, which is the most iconic and well-known Kraven story ever written. Kraven says in that comic, my mother went insane. Or they said my mother was insane. So I guess that's, their way of dealing with that in this movie. Oh, his mom is in an asylum, and she's afraid of spiders, or she's imagining she's seeing spiders everywhere. Again, it's so random. It just doesn't make any sense. And people talk about Madam Web having bad ADR, but I think the ADR in this movie is honestly worse. There are so many scenes in this movie that gets dubbed over with ADR. It's really distracting. I don't know what the fuck was going on behind the scenes. If this was just for one movie, I could maybe understand that. Like, I don't know, maybe it was rushed and like, they didn't have time to fucking refilm the scenes, so they just used ADR. But the fact that this happens in more than one movie is just kind of saying that, like, they just don't care. It's not like they were rushed. They just don't care about the finished movie. Now, this movie was rated R, which surprised me. I don't know why they didn't feel the need to make any of the Venom movies rated R, but for some reason they made this movie rated R. And yeah, you get a little bit more blood than usual. That's really it. There's a scene where Kraven is attacking these hunters in a truck, and I mean, it's brutal. He bites someone's neck. That scene is kind of cool, I guess, but again, I really don't care. Now, there's one scene in this movie that I actually thought was kind of cool, and it's pretty much the only reason why this is above Madam Web, because they both have the same exact problems, and they're pretty much on the same level. There was one scene where Kraven attacks this gang, and then they think they got away from Kraven, and the guy walks into his office or whatever, and he thinks he's talking to his boss, and then the chair turns around and it's Kraven sitting there. And I actually thought that was a pretty cool reveal, if I'm being honest. And then he says, you know, where's the boss? And Kraven's like, you're standing in him. And he looks down and sees a pool of blood. I'm not gonna lie, that moment was cool. It was kind of badass. But the rest of the movie sucks. That's like the only thing I liked in the movie. So yeah, Kraven the Hunter is trash. And it doesn't come as a surprise to me. When this movie came out, you can tell that people just did not even care about the SSU, because, you know, we had already gotten Morbius and Madam Web and the fucking Venom movies, and, you know, those movies, when they came out, people were talking about them because it was funny, and because it was these movies were so bad, and it was fun to make fun of these movies. But when Kraven the Hunter came out, I didn't hear anyone talk about this movie. So you could tell at this point that people just didn't care. You know? People kind of accepted, yeah, we know these movies are bad, we're just not going to bother even acknowledging them at this point. And it shows, because this was also the worst performing SSU movie so far. This movie did not even make $100 million. It made like $62 million, I think. Horrible. So yeah, don't watch this movie. So at number 5 is the movie that gets memed on the most, but ironically I don't consider it to be the worst, is Morbius. Morbius is a slight step above Kraven and Madam Web. And I mean like a slight step above, because it's still really bad. It's still full of things that don't make sense, bad special effects. Acting is not really that bad, but it's not really impressive either. A villain that is not very good. I'll give the movie this. The main villain, Milo, he's not nearly as bad as Rhino or Ezekiel, because his motivation does make sense, but it's still a pretty weak one. Him and Morbius were friends as kids, and they both have a blood disease that's slowly killing them. They have a hard time walking, and so during the events of the movie, when Morbius is a scientist and he's a doctor or whatever, he's working on a cure for him and Milo. And so when the cure ends up going wrong and he turns into a vampire, Milo is like, hey, why not give me some of that? And then Morbius is like, no, it's dangerous. Like, I've killed people. You don't want this. And then Milo's like, you know, you just want me to die then? So he takes the serum or whatever, and he becomes a vampire. I think that motivation makes more sense than fucking Rhino, and especially Ezekiel. But the problem is his turn happens too fast. It's like he goes from liking Morbius 1 minute, and then the next minute he hates him and is like, you know, you don't see, like, we're gods now, we can do whatever, we're not gonna die. it's just too quick. I'll also say that I do think that the cloak smoke effect kind of reminds me of like Nightcrawler from the X-Men. It can be cool, like when Morbius is jumping around and like flying, you get that like smoke effect with his clothes. I think that's cool, but again, the rest of the movie is the rest of the movie. It's really fucking boring. You don't care for any of these characters. There's also a really dumb moment I want to mention where Morbius is dealing with his condition. He wants blood because he's a vampire. So Milo shows up to his office, and Morbius is in this like tank, this empty like glass containment, because he's trying to see how long he can go without blood because he's trying not to kill people. Milo walks in and he's like, holy shit, you know, what happened to you? And then Morbius is just uses his own blood to write the word blood on the glass, and then Milo's like, blood? And then he immediately just goes into the freezer room, gets a pack of blood, brings it to Morbius with no questions asked, and Morbius drinks it. It's like, what the fuck did you think was gonna happen? He never once questions why Morbius needs blood. It's not like he was doing some experiment and he was at his desk or whatever. He's just like in an empty glass containment. Like, and he just says blood. What the fuck? Milo never once questions it. It was just laughable. I do want to praise one scene in this movie, however. I always thought that the hallway scene, when that doctor lady is walking down the hallway, the lights are flickering, and then you see Morbius like on one of the walls in the back, and he quickly like darts back and forth, and you get like the lights going on and off. I actually thought that scene was done really well. I think it's suspenseful, if I'm being honest. And the way the scene ends and transitions is also really nice. You get like the doctor killed, and then the lights all slowly go off. I like that scene. That's honestly a well-made scene. Not saying this movie is anywhere near good. I don't care about the characters. Villain is weak. Special effects are bad. It's not funny. This movie thinks it's cooler than it actually is, but it's not. I mean, there is that one funny scene where Milo is dancing and the song have sex, have sex. It's so fucking goofy, but like I don't know if that scene was supposed to be funny or if it was supposed to be serious and cool, but either way, that scene is actually unintentionally funny. But then of course you have the horrible mid-credit scene, which is this is the worst mid-credit scene I have ever seen in any movie. It is the most nonsensical bullshit I've ever seen to set up a movie. Michael Keaton's Vulture suddenly appears in a prison cell, and it's like he was transported from the MCU. And then they release him because he hasn't actually done anything wrong in this universe, so they release him. They don't know where he came from. And then you have there's two mid-credit scenes. The next mid-credit scene, he fucking meets Morbius in a field somewhere. He has his Vulture suit, even though it doesn't make any sense. How the fuck did he get his Vulture suit? He meets Morbius. And then he's like, oh, well, I'm not sure how I got here, but I think it has something to do with Spider-Man. How the fuck do you know that? And why would you want to team up with Morbius? He's like, yeah, I think a bunch of us should team up and do some good. They're clearly trying to set up the Sinister Six, and it's like it's the dumbest, most nonsensical setup I've ever seen. Did they honestly think that this made any sense? And this is another movie that they tricked people to thinking had something to do with Spider-Man in the trailers, because in the trailer, There's a scene that is not in the movie where you see Morbius walk past a wall, and on the wall there's a poster of Spider-Man that's taken from the fucking PS4 game, by the way. It's not even it's not even original photo of Spider-Man. It's a still shot of the Raimi Spider-Man suit from the Spider-Man PS4 game, and it has the word murderer written on it. Seriously, again, this is another example. They don't care. They just want you to think, holy shit, it's the Raimi Spider-Man. Maybe he's going to be in this movie, but he's not. The movie was the scene was cut from the movie. They also put Michael Keaton's Vulture in the trailer, in a scene that's not in the fucking movie. At number 4 is Venom, the first SSU movie. Now, from here on out, I'm not really going to go too much into it because I've already talked about these movies. But I will say that I still don't think Venom is a good movie. Bad acting. Special effects are not great. But again, it's not... I don't think the special effects being good is as big a deal as the other movies, because Venom is an alien. The symbiote in this movie is more liquidy, and I guess so they can get away with the special effects not being as good. The comedy in this movie is hit or miss. I think there's moments where, yeah, it's kind of funny, and then there's moments where it's like, yeah, it's really not funny. Tom Hardy is a good pick for Eddie Brock. Riot is a forgettable villain. Michelle Williams is in this movie playing Anne Wang, Eddie's ex-wife. She's not very good in this movie. And I know for a fact it was probably the directing and not Michelle Williams' fault, because Michelle Williams is in Halloween H2O. She plays Molly in that movie. And her performance in that movie is fine. You know? When she sees Michael Myers in that movie, she's afraid. But when she sees Venom in this movie, she has no reaction. So I don't know what was going on there. I've said it before, I love the music of this movie, and it's a shame they didn't bring the same composer for the second and third movie. But yeah, music's cool. It's badass. There is some cool moments in this movie. The first time you see Eddie transform into Venom for the first time, it's pretty fucking cool, along with the music combined. It's boring. Like, the origin story is boring. It's watchable. I still don't think this movie is good, like I said, but it's watchable compared to fucking Morbius and Kraven and Madam Web. Those 3 movies are super fucking boring. Venom is not as boring, but it's, you know, it has stuff that you can get a kick out of. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's still not a very good movie. And the mid-credit scene is also shit when it reveals Woody Harrelson in that fucking Ronald McDonald wig. Horrible post-credit scene. This is the most successful SSU movie. It made over $800 million. And I'll tell you exactly why it was so successful. Because the movie didn't get good reviews. Most people thought it was bad. I do want to acknowledge that there are fans of the Venom movies, so obviously, you know, not everyone thinks they're bad. There was a lot of contributing factors as to why this movie did so well. This movie was released in 2018. This was during the peak of the MCU's popularity, and the peak of superhero movies' popularity in general. Avengers Infinity War had just come out, fucking one of the biggest movies ever made, so this movie was releasing in October, like a few months after. You have all these other successful superhero movies, and Sony was kind of wanting people to think it was in the MCU, but it's not. Obviously, that's been a common theme, like I said, with all of these movies. They try to trick people. They try to trick people into thinking that these movies are actually cool and that they take place in the MCU, but they don't. That was a factor to help this movie, is that a lot of people were actually confused as to whether this was the MCU or not. So it's like, okay, people are going to go see it because they think it's an MCU movie. And then they're like, holy fuck, that was bad, and it's not in the MCU. It's riding off the success of the MCU and of superhero movies and of people being confused over what the fuck this movie was, and the fact that Venom, unlike Morbius and Madam Web and Kraven, is an actual popular character that people like. Venom is a very popular Spider-Man character. unlike the other characters. So that was another factor. It's also kind of funny because this movie, I believe it made more than Iron Man, which kicked off the MCU. So the SSU had more success at its launch than the MCU did, which is funny to think about. But yeah, this was the biggest hit of the SSU, and it was the movie that convinced Sony that maybe they had something with this universe. But they didn't. I don't think they took into consideration what I just said about the fact that it was riding off of the success of the MCU. That's really the biggest reason why this movie was so popular, so successful. So they then made, the second Venom movie, which didn't do nearly as well. And then you have fucking Morbius and shit, and then it just got worse from there. Hell, even I went to go see this movie in 2018. This is only one of two SSU movies that I saw. So at number 3 is Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Unlike the majority, I don't think this is the worst Venom movie. I think from a technical aspect, it is probably the worst Venom movie, but personally, I enjoy it a lot more than the first movie because it's way more entertaining. The acting is horrible. Performances are worse than the first movie. Special effects are worse than the first movie. I've said before that the special effects aren't as big of a deal on Venom because of him being an alien. But in the case of this movie, Carnage looks horrible. Especially in the scene where he breaks out from the prison. It's so distractingly bad. But this movie is fucking funny. It's funny in a bad way, though. The comedy is not good, but it's hilariously bad. You're laughing at the movie. It's just funny. It's dumb as fuck. And this is one of those movies where you kind of have to turn your brain off and accept that, yeah, this movie's bad and it's really dumb. But you kind of just you just have fun with it. And at number 2, the best SSU movie is Venom: The Last Dance. Now, even though I consider this to be the best Venom movie, I also consider it to be the most disappointing Venom movie. Because, and again, that's saying a lot considering that it was coming off of the first 2 movies, which weren't good. But this is based off the Donny Cates Venom run in the comics, which I consider to be excellent. I think it's the best Venom story ever told. And I had some hope going into this movie because I was like, okay, they're basing it off of a really good story. Donny Cates said that the script was really good and shit, which I think is complete bullshit. I think he was paid to say that, honestly, because this shits all over what he did in the comics, so I have no idea why he would say that. But it's a disappointment because it does not do the comic justice. Null is wasted in this movie. He barely has any screen time. He doesn't do anything. His minions, the xenophages, do everything for him. It's got cool action. This probably has the best action scenes out of any movie. It's actually got pretty good acting. Some of the actors are still not great. The actress who plays Mrs. Chen has always been bad in these movies. The family that Eddie goes on the road trip with, especially that little kid, the little kid is probably the best actor in the fucking movie, which is surprising. So, the acting is not as bad. It's pretty fun at times. The Venom horse is pretty cool. When you get to see all the symbiotes at the end come out and fight, that's pretty cool. That scientist lady is laughable. I mean, you have a symbiote that has super speed. The potential with that was fucking that would have been so cool to actually have a symbiote that has super speed. You could have used that throughout the movie, but it's only used once. She's only used once at the end of the movie, and she saves her partner. That's it. What a waste. Venom dies at the end of this movie, but then they still set up a future for Venom, which is confusing. They said that they still had a future for Null, because Null is not defeated, but his minions are, but he's still like locked in a cage. But he says, "Oh, I'm gonna be coming back, guys. Don't worry." But I don't think we're gonna see Null again. Tom Hardy's contract expired after Venom 3. He signed on for 3 movies. So they're not going to make a Venom 4. You know, Tom Hardy's Venom could come back in some form, but I just don't see what they can do with Null at this point, especially from what we saw of him in this movie. He's a fucking joke in this movie. He's not a great villain at all. So even though Venom: The Last Dance is a disappointment for comic book fans, fans of the comic like me, I think the Venom movies in general, they're entertaining. They're not boring. Well, the first movie's kind of boring, but like they're not boring like the other 3 movies. So you can watch them and you probably will have a good time as long as you just acknowledge, like, as long as you go into it knowing that these aren't good movies. You're just kind of there to see Venom being goofy and using his powers to fight people. And at number 1, shocking no one, is Spider-Noir. Holy shit, I know. Yeah, Spider-Noir, not gonna go into it. This show is really fucking cool. Like I said, shot very well. Nicolas Cage is awesome as this version of Spider-Man, and it's just so refreshing to see Spider-Man act like this. Really badass. The characters, most of them are interesting. Like I said, I'm not a fan of Silvermane, the main villain. Probably my biggest problem with the show is Silvermane. And some of the effects are not great, but it's such a step above these other fucking projects. Like, this is what they should have been doing from the beginning. If they wanted to create their own, you know, franchise or their own universe. Even though this doesn't take place in the same universe as the movies. So if this is the future of the SSU, if they're just going to create like standalone projects and they're going to focus more on quality over quantity and less about setting up a universe and more so just about the story, I think that's the right thing for the future of the SSU. They don't have to be like the MCU and have a bunch of fucking characters and like have them cross over, even though they didn't have them cross over. That's a weird thing about these movies, is that they're not really leading up to anything. They're not leading up to some Avengers type crossover. They're just doing whatever. They're slapping together some bullshit with no effort and hoping that it works. Spider-Noir actually has effort put into it. There's people who care this time. So that's all the SSU movies ranked. Like I said, I mainly just use this as an excuse to talk about the worst of the worst, Morbius, Kraven, and Madam Web, which I haven't talked about before. If we can get more projects like Spider-Noir, that'd be great. I know they're apparently working on an animated Venom movie that could potentially be rated R. And if that's the case, I think that sounds really fucking interesting. I think making an animated Venom movie would be a good way of redeeming the live action movies. So let's hope that the SSU can keep this up and give us more projects that are just standalone and, you know, not about Spider-Man villains, but about Spider-Man. If they want to do projects about different versions of Spider-Man, like Spider-Man 2099 or, you know, Spider-Woman, you know, like, people would actually be interested in those projects rather than these dumbass villain movies. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good night.